spent so many years meditating, like thousands of hours meditating and doing mantra and chanting. And not one time did I do it with my finger in my pussy. And I'm like, how the fuck did that happen? Like all these years I'm just sitting around meditating, and not one time did I think like, I wonder what this would be like if my finger was my pussy and I was meditating, like, how did that happen? So that was part of like when I would do that, when I would do this mapping practice, I'd be like, whoa, I would tune into really to altered states of consciousness when I would do the mapping practice, because I already had access to altered states.
Wait.
Yeah.
I see. So you would start, you took your spiritual maps and then you started connecting them to your
right.
pussy,
I mean, it also just started happening.
Brilliant. Genius.
Yeah.
Genius.
It wasn't like I thought of it.
I mean, why did no one think of this all these years? I think maybe there were a few prohibitions around it or something.
Totally, exactly. And then I would find that other people have had this experience, and I'm not the only one. And then but it's not like traditionally taught about. And so anyway, coming back quickly to the consent and the choice, it's really important that we're actually learning how to say yes, how to say no. These are things that we practice in the retreats that I do, because we're not comfortable saying yes. We're not comfortable. Well, most of us are comfortable. Most people with vulvas are very comfortable saying yes, but we're not comfortable saying no. Dealing with rejection, dealing with uncertainty, dealing with feeling unsafe. It's a process. And so we need to actually practice it. And so that's why I guide people to practice it with themselves. And then, you take that every step along the way. And then it actually creates this kind of tension that can be a turn on too. It's not just like you're asking permission because you're going to get in trouble. It's more like, ooh, like, do you like this? You know what I mean? And it's like, whoa, what do you like about it? It's just allowing us to be as deep as we actually are, and most mainstream consciousness and media and porn, it's just like, it's devoid of depth. It's devoid of intimacy, and it's devoid of feeling, and it's devoid of arguments and all the things that are actually a part of our sex life, like the moment.
I agree. I mean, it's devoid of the real juice, right? You've got all that the phony squirt juice is squirting around. But the juice, the relational juice. And I think that this is, of course, porn has become default sex education, and it's so performance based, and we've got the teenagers thinking that they need to look like porn stars, and even people in their 40s thinking they need to look like porn stars. So it's a tough one. I think you're right. It's an unlearning process. I mean, you're unlearning. We're unlearning with our own bodies and our own minds, and we're also unlearning on sort of in terms of a bigger kind of cultural movement. I think there's a lot of,
and I think that's why people are afraid of it. Like, I think you're not actually afraid of your own body or your own sexuality. I think we get afraid because we don't know what it means. We don't know what it means about us. If we're not conditioned to feel like, if our asses doesn't look like this, and if we don't have big tits, and if we don't have cellulite, and we don't look like this, and we don't ever age, that then we're going to be, then we deserve love. You know what I mean? Which is like a completely,
I mean, that's really
standard. It's like we all deserve love, and that's what it.
But you're absolutely right. That's what that is. I mean, and it's the fear of not having love that I think does really screw things up. And of course, if we're practicing in these loaded environments where, let's say, you're going on a date with someone you would really love to become your boyfriend. I mean, I think that can really, if you're not confident, that can put a lot of pressure on, and it can be very easy to, undermine your true self in subtle little ways.
So one of the ways that I think anybody listening can practice any of the things that we're talking about on their own, although I do highly, highly, highly recommend a guide, because we're talking about receptivity, right? And we're talking about relationships. So although some of these practices, even including the self-pleasure practice, is about you and your body, being guided takes this whole other piece into the equation where you're doing these reparative experiences where you're healing. So when I guide people, I'm guiding you, for example, Jane, to be your own sexual healer, right? So you're not depending on anyone else to do that, right? Or to enhance your sex life. And then, everything just gets so much more fun and liberating, as a result. But it also really helps to be guided, because we want to be able to sink in and soften and slow down. And it's just not our conditioning. We're conditioned to like go fast. We come from this culture of domination, and it's like, go, do, and it's like, it actually can feel uncomfortable to slow down. We might feel anxiety. And so to have somebody that's there saying, it's okay to feel that anxiety or to feel that grief or to feel that discomfort. Let's see what happens next. And really just kind of keep unfolding from there. It really helps. That being said, anybody listening, that has a vulva, you can do these explorations on your own in really simple ways, just by getting a mirror. Obviously, you can use your phone if you don't have anything else, but like, when's the last time you looked at your pussy, and how many other people have looked at your pussy and you don't look at it? And this is true for me too. A lot more people have looked at my pussy, even at this point, probably, than I have looked at it. It's not like I'm like every day, like looking at my pussy in the mirror, but it's like, you can come into this practice just very simply and just taking a few breaths and just like noticing what your response is, right? Because you might kind of feel like, oh, you might feel a sensation of disgust, right? And the truth is that it's not a lot of that is projected, right? It's coming from the culture. It's coming from people that have their own fear and how that fear has been projected onto us in different forms, like anger or meanness or whatever, right? So not to take it so seriously, but to see it for what it is. It's like, oh, I feel kind of weird, like, oh, like, okay, so you feel a little weird, like, no big deal, right? Because that weirdness is also probably somewhere in your lovemaking or your lack of lovemaking or your inability to just claim, right? What you want or what you don't, right? And so that's just a really simple practice you can do, and taking a few breaths and just noticing. And if you're somebody who wants to take it a step further, you could do some writing around it, right? Maybe you look and you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I never did this. Wow. Like, look at that. It's amazing. It's incredible. And just, following that thread, following what comes up for you and honoring what that is as something that's sacred, because it is. Your direct experience as a human being of your own body is sacred, right? And like I said, you want to take it from this place of consent, so you can, just prepare your body. You can prepare the space if you want, like I said, usually our vulva doesn't want to be like looked at like head on, so it's like, turn the lights down, put on a candle, and not to, you doesn't have to be a typical thing, but what's true for you, you could, put on some music, create something that's going to make you feel like, okay, this makes me feel good, and we always teach movement, because movement helps us to move through the inhibitions that will naturally come up when we go to do any of this work. And it's not lost on me that these things are uncomfortable for good reasons, because I came from being completely disconnected from my body. I mean, like, I was like on another planet and my body was like here on Earth. Like, what am I supposed to do? And I was like, wait, how am I supposed to get in there? Like, you want me to go from here to in there? That seems really like a far distance. And that far distance that I traveled, metaphorically speaking, I learned a lot of fucking cool shit along the way. So it's also to affirm any disassociation and disconnection that we might have, because that's what brings us together, to learn in these cool ways. That's what might bring you to a class where you get to just like be in a group and no one else is looking at you because everybody's in their private space, cameras off, whatever. Or maybe the next level of that might be a retreat where, again, nobody's looking at you. It's just between you and nature, you and the wall. We're not doing this, everything's private and sacred, but there's steps along the way that we can take. And I really want everybody to know that, because I believe in the power of people who have vulvas desire and true desire, not desire based on what other people think you should want, but the truest desires, which will ask us to die. They will ask us for parts of us, let me say it that way, to die, because parts of us only know who we are based on who others think we are and who others say we are. And that shit is usually not a super great idea and usually results in more and more suffering, So to break free of those cages over and over and over again, we want to make it fun, I think. Otherwise, the spiritual path just becomes a bummer, So
you are talking my language.
Yeah, that's
so good. So good. Yeah.